I'd just like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that I'm coming from today, which is the Wabakal land of the Aboriginal people, also known as the Mourn-Bimbin people. And I pay my respects to their elders, both past, present, and those yet to be. And I also pay my respects to the traditional owners of the countries that you're all beaming in today over Zoom, and pay my respects to Indigenous people that are joining us today on this meeting. So, okay, so welcome everybody. People will slowly be trickling in as we go, but I'd like to begin by inviting Professor Mark Hoffman, who is our Deputy Vice-Chancellor Academic and a Vice President of the University of Newcastle, to begin this event. Over to you, Professor Hoffman.
Yeah, Andy, thanks very much. I've got some things to say about the collection we're launching. Firstly, I have to say I'm just really pleased to be here with this group. I think it's a wonderful group that the university, as a part of the university community, and I think it's just wonderful that Gioni, you yourself, but also leading, but also just the whole group comes together. I think it's a wonderful thing and a wonderful testament that even though the university is a relatively young university, it has this wonderful community built around it, around really important things such as this. And I think essentially the launch of this collection is a really important part of that. So Gioni, do you want me to kick off? I think firstly say a few things about Bob James, who dedicated 40 years to researching and building a collection that illustrates the history of that community, self-help and mutual aid through the development of a growth of Australian fraternalism. This donation is the largest of its kind in Australia and provides rich research and educational resource for the university and our community. Now, it was an extraordinary act of generosity to the university that Dr. James donated such a large portion of his collection to our library's special collections. Now, this is going to be called the Bob James Fraternal Society's Collection, including books, photographs, honour boards, regalia, medallions, and oral history recordings, which give us a really rich set of primary resources to support a range of discipline areas in research and education. Now, the university, essentially in response to this really very generous donation, has funded a purpose-built facility to house it. Now, it takes up a floor space on level 1 of the our community library, and I went in there just on Friday, and hosts the compactors to hang art, honour boards and other framed items, as well as bespoke storage drawers and cabinets to hold a range of items of different form, material and size. The room is airtight and climate controlled to ensure the longevity of the collection in our care, because we really want this to last. It's such an incredible donation. Now, Bob James also made a substantial financial contribution to accompany the collection, which has funded a project team to prepare a session and digitise the collection and make it accessible to the broader community. And this is a really important part of what's happening in the field, that we have wonderful collections, but we digitise them, so you don't actually have to come in, but actually see the collection physically, even though it's very nice to do so, but a much broader group of people have actually got access to that. Now, it's taken the library's dedicated experts in its special collection to work on the project, but been really proud that through this donation, we've been able to partner with students through work integrated learning. And this is what's wonderful about a university, that we can actually draw on students, and it's a great resource for us, but it's also an incredible learning experience for those students themselves. They've both volunteered and been paid to assist to bring this collection into both physical and online formats. Now, it's taken almost 5 years from initial discussions through to the digital launch of this today of the Bob James Fraternal Society's collection. And we're very proud to share it widely on an open access platform with global reach. So that means that anyone can see this collection. It's got connections with a range of disciplines, including languages and symbolism, women's studies and political sciences, the history and business development, including financial and insurance organisations, and so on. The contribution of fraternal societies to our region's history and social development has had little research attention, And this presents an opportunity for our researchers to take a deep dive into these materials and to help tell the lesser known stories of our history. And we're just really proud that they're a part of our community library at the University of Newcastle. Now, unfortunately, as many of us know, the pandemic has thwarted our planned physical exhibition, but it'll be forthcoming in 2022 to complement the digital launch. And I hope that many of you can join us there and actually come in and see the collection. It'll certainly be well advertised through this forum and via other means. So please come along when you see that advertisement to actually see the collection. So thank you, Bob, for your generous donation. And we hope that our university and its regions gain new insights and create new knowledge from all that this eclectic collection has to offer. Thanks very much, Gianni.
Thanks, Mark. Yes, it's been quite an amazing journey from 2015 when we first started discussions, and it's also pushed us right out of our comfort zones. And you're absolutely right. It was a partnership between the university providing the infrastructure and Bob providing the funds so that we could employ our students to work on it. So it's been a real great win-win situation, but we couldn't have done it without the help from the alumni and philanthropy. So it's just wonderful that we've got Mrs. Jacqueline Hamilton to join us today. She's donor stewardship and gifts in wills coordinator in the Office of Alumni and Philanthropy. Over to you, Jacqueline.
Thank you. So working in philanthropy, I have the privilege to see firsthand the real difference kindness and generosity can have on the lives of others. Our university has been entrusted with generous donations supporting both our students and researchers from local and global communities for more than 50 years. We are so grateful for all this life-giving and life-changing donations that we receive from our generous donors that have a positive, tangible impact in the world and will be felt for generations. Leaving a philanthropic gift is a way to feed your passions and live out your values. That means so many different things to all of us, but the stories of the gifts we receive are always so inspiring and moving in so many ways. What makes this extraordinary gift from alumnus Dr. Bob James so special and so unique is its ability to transform our students' lives and provide a rich educational and research resource that connects our community with its ancestors. The opportunity that has been provided to our students to partake in volunteering, work-integrated learning, and short-term paid employment to document, digitize, and archive over 1,000 items of the significant collection through a liberal $125,000 donation by Dr. James has been life-changing. In challenging times, this project has given our students real-life opportunities, the chance to learn new skill sets, the opportunity to collaborate with colleagues, and to gain really valuable leadership skills. Our paid student project assistants, Alex Parks, Katie Sentas, Claire Weeks, and Ted Stein, have played such a pivotal role in preserving an essential snapshot of history. The transferable skills they have learned on this project will provide them with excellent future employment opportunities. Dr. James, we are so grateful for your generous support that has not only positively impacted our students' lives and research at our university to date, but will do so for so many decades to come. Your willingness to share and entrust the University of Newcastle with these precious items is invaluable. We thank you so very much.
So they use something to cheese to it.
Thanks very much, Jacqueline. Here, Bob. I mean, last year when the world was just falling apart with COVID, there were people just losing their jobs left, right and centre, and we were just one of the few places that were able to employ people.
I didn't notice, John. I didn't notice, sorry.
You didn't notice? No, well, anyway. I thanked you in the car park, remember?
Oh.
Anyway, one of those people we've got here today, Catherine Sentis. So she's recently been appointed our Special Collections Support Librarian, but she was one of the student interns that was employed last year to work on your collection, Bob. All of them have found work since, paid work since. So it's been a great thing for them and a great thing for the community because this material that they've digitized is now out there. But anyway, Katie, where are you? You
I'm right
the
here.
stage.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Jenny. So, yep, as Jenny said, my name's Katie Sentis. I was part of the student team who worked on the project, and on behalf of that team, who was comprised of Claire Weeks, Alex Parts, Ted Stein, and myself, I would like to thank Bob for making such a significant contribution to the university, which also made a substantial contribution to our own skills development. Not only did the project provide us with paid employment, but it also provided us with invaluable hands-on experience working in the sector. We developed skills in the proper care and handling of collection items, the organisation and rehousing of material, as well as skills in digitisation and metadata documentation to create the searchable record, which we also work to make available online. On top of that, we learned a great deal more about friendly societies and the significance to the region, which previously I knew next to nothing about. So, and for me personally, as Johnny mentioned, as a result of the skills that I've gained, I've continued to work on special collections projects, and I'm now lucky enough to have a position within the team. And the others have also gone on to various positions within the university. So we have enormous gratitude to Bob for providing this opportunity, as well as to the alumni and philanthropy team. We would also like to thank Amir for patiently guiding us through this journey, and to Paige, who supervised the last phase of the metadata entry for the online platform. So thank you so much. You made a huge impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. All right, now we have Dr. Amir Moghadam. He's the University Conservator, and he's overseen the relocation of Bob's extensive collection from his house into the L107. And he's also overseen the documentation and digitisation. So it was no mean feat. This is the GLAM collection, which pushed us right out of our comfort zones because it involved everything from gallery that you would usually store in a gallery, a library, an archive, and a museum. So we decided to do the lot. So Amir, you can take us on a tour of the work of the group. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks everyone for attending today's session. It's an emotional session for myself because it's kind of like wrapping up a 5-year project with lots of ups and downs. So thanks, Bob, for making it happen, and thanks everyone to be along. I just take you just a short tour to our digital exhibition that then you can have a look at your own time. So the whole idea for this digital exhibition came after we have been facing with restrictions and challenges that was posed to us by the COVID restrictions. So we wanted to have something for people to access freely and openly. And also we wanted a sustainable project, like sustainable collection. So it can be researched and accessed regardless of restrictions of the time. So with the help of the greater team, we came up with an idea of having a digital exhibition. And as you can see, and I take you through, it is very easy platform to navigate through. So our idea was like the users can see everything in one look, and then if they wanted to research more, they could easily navigate their path. We have photos in it, and within this exhibition, We have a narration that contextualizes the collection in relation to Australian history, as well as like most importantly, regional story of Newcastle and around. So we have videos produced about the collection. So any users from anywhere in the world can just click on the videos and have a look, a general look through what is involved in the collection. And because I'm mindful of the time, I just try to make it quick, and then you can have a look at your own time. Then we have a panorama, like some photos and panorama. This panorama is very important because apart from the usual understanding that these were mostly like masculine communities, you can see women taking part in like as early as 1914. So very important photo. Then we have collections. This is a live collection, so you can click on it and you can go to our Living Histories repository and check everything over there. Just click on it and easily you can go to the item. And then we have samples of the certificates that have been used. Throughout the page, we have the story going on in relation to the photos and images that are shared. For example, this one is an interesting photo of Orange Lodge in 1950s, and with few influential Newcastle people in it. And then a little story about a lady who was creating regalia and all those material for the community, for the fraternal societies in town in like 1950s, that you can click on and go to the main story on the trove, or click on the item and see some of the items as well. We have more videos here about the collection. Again, this is a live collection, and you can check out the collection through the videos. I particularly need to thank academics who kindly supported us throughout the project. Dr. Gareth Van Dyke, Dr. Erin McCarthy, and also our international colleagues like Dr. Heather Calloway, that is the manager of the Fraternal Societies Museum at Indiana University, US, and Dr. Daniel Weinberg, who is an academic in Open University with a focused research on the same topic. So you can have short talks from the presenters here, and we have the Dr. Weinberg's talk as well, but because it arrived a little bit late, we didn't have time to put it on the main page, but this would be something that we can add in future. Dr. Gareth Van Dyke helped us with having a very useful timeline. So this narrates the context of fraternal societies from their own time up until these societies coming to Australia in mid-19th century. And then if you want to dig more and investigate more, you have these sections that you can click on them, and you can have access to our digital repository named Living Histories, and then also you can have access to the stories that we continuously develop and write and work out on the Hunter Living Histories platform. Also, we have a short bio for Bob, thanking his donation. and also a little bit of a statement about the project. So, but I would like to mention that this was a 5-year project in which many people contributed, and it wasn't possible with the help of a greater team. So I particularly want to thank Kerry Reagan, Paige Wright, the whole Special Collections team, Danilo Maitoka, and also library business team, and student engagement and partnerships, and digital library experience and philanthropy team that at every stage they help us and support us to do that. And also, again, thank Bob for making it happen. And yeah, so that is from me. And I do apologize if any names, I missed any names. I acknowledge all the help that we have received. And I look forward for people to use it and communicate to us so we can develop a similar project. One other thing that this project helped out was preparing a grounds for having similar exhibitions, so we can use the same platform for other exhibitions. And hopefully we are going to have a physical exhibit next year. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Amir. Now over to you, Bob. So Dr. Bob James is an alumnus of this university, and he's been responsible for amassing this collection across 40 years. So Bob, are you ready?
Of course.
There you go. Over to you.
Thanks, John. This is a great day. It's a milestone, in fact, and I thank everyone who's made it possible. I thank everyone who has spoken so far for the kind words. I didn't do this work in order to provide employment for students, but I'm glad that that's worked out, and I'm glad that the university is making the running with the collection now, because it's no good sitting in my cupboards and bedrooms and all the rest of it. I especially thank John, who was the notable person who kept the faith through those 5 years. There have been trials along the way, and the task is not yet done. The University of Newcastle is passing through some of its most difficult trials at present, and the future, I know, remains uncertain. However, to celebrate what has been achieved so far and to try and get across something about the importance of fraternalism and the fraternal societies, I thought to summarise in a few words the journey that has already taken up over 30 years of my life. You would expect me to say that this collection is important, but I'm sure you've heard others say that sort of thing about their rolling pin collection or their first edition of The History of Whatnots in Outer Mongolia, 1832 to 1945, signed with dust jacket. I hated history as it was taught to me at Boys High in the 1950s, and only came back to its possibilities in the 1970s and 1980s when Gough Whitlam and others showed me that history was important. My screen's frozen. Oh, I think it's all right. Oh, I can get there. Yes. That the history I'd been taught at school had been written by the winners, the great men of history, so that it was one-sided at the very least. But more than that, they had decided what was going to be left out. They had decided what was unimportant and irrelevant to my life, or your lives for that matter. That realisation about the bits that had been left out opened my ideas to how exciting history might be if all of the missing bits were put back in. And that's been happening slowly, as we know. Women have been allowed in. This is Australian history as a whole I'm speaking of. Aboriginal persons are being allowed in, gay people and so on. But it's important to ask, why weren't they in the first place? And who decided on how much value to give to rolling pins as opposed to Mongolian whatnots, 1832 to 1945 with dust jacket. I'm sure you've learnt that just asking the question can be dangerous. I've had to be quite stubborn. Ooh. Sorry.
Just the down
The down arrow. I've had to be stubborn to get the fraternal collection even this far. Don't go to sleep, Doug. Wake up, Doug. I've had to be stubborn to get the fraternal collection even this far, and very subversive. I came to the fraternals by way of Labor history, and I came close to having my face punched in when I asked the people at Trades Hall here in Newcastle why their 8-hour and May Day banners had Masonic symbols in them. Of course, they weren't Masonic symbols, but just to suggest that they might be was to invite a pummeling. Then I found that the Masons couldn't tell me either why they were there, and they suggested I needed a black eye from them as well. I realised then that the stories told by the Freemasons about themselves and the stories told by Trades Hall about themselves and the labour movement were mostly bull dust, just like the stories I'd been told in high school about Britain's royal families. I'd read a lot of labour history, and something which caused the pennies to drop eventually was a realisation, a little thing perhaps, but it was important at the time, that labour history books often featured 8-hour or May Day marches on their covers, but inside those parades weren't mentioned at all, or only very briefly. Another penny dropped when I read in Donald Horne's autobiography that Musselbrook, where he was born, no, it's not clicking. In Donald Horne's autobiography, he wrote that the town had been run by the Freemasons. And then I discovered that in all his books, he didn't mention the Freemasons again. Clearly, not all that's been left out of our histories has been omitted for the same reason. Imagine if Horne had written that Musselbrook had been run by the KKK. Would he have been allowed then not to explain? But the Freemasons running the town, that was different. I remember too when James Bond movies were just getting going, and there was a lot of interest in spies and secret societies generally, especially in US bases at Pine Gap and elsewhere in Australia, and the CIA's involvement in the 1975 dismissal. By that time, I'd taught myself how to do research after a number of academics paid to teach me had failed to do so. And I began looking at the history of the earliest police forces and the earliest militias in European Australia. Among other things, I discovered undercover policemen using disguises and codes to infiltrate gangs smuggling goods across the Murray River. The colonial states in those days being among the first to insist that they would determine who and what came into their country, and had set up customs barriers at the borders, or in this case, at the river's edge. But why was it that I had to discover this material? Why was it hard to find? Answer, because it had been left out of our official histories too. I couldn't find anyone in Australia who even knew the name of a secret society in Australia, or anyone who agreed with me that the trade unions were closely connected to the Freemasons and the Grand United Order of Oddfellows. So I went overseas in 2004 to a conference, We Band of Brothers, I think it was called, at Sheffield University, where I met Dan Weinbrun, then coordinating the first, perhaps the only research-based organisation in the world looking at friendly societies. That conference, I remember, had an agenda to get labour historians to talk to people interested in the other fraternals. So among other things, Dan and I got together to write a piece comparing the UK with the Australian experience. We found we couldn't even agree about friendly societies. So we agreed to write about how they were very different animals in our two countries. So much for the agenda to bring fraternal history under one title. But it was a beginning, and although the only fraternal conferences that came after Sheffield were devoted entirely to Freemasonry, I was still quite sure that they needed to be brought together. And since 2004, there have been signs that other people are moving in the same direction. Back in Australia, I found some waves and strays trying to understand the fraternals too. One I found who has proven to be extremely important to the Hunter River District in particular is Tony Laffin. Can I just hold it up? Of course I can. Tony is, I'm pleased to say, with us today. His book, How Orange is My Valley, blows completely out of the water the rubbish that we've all been told about the Labor movement, especially to do with the coal mines in this region. It also dispels the bull dust that the Loyal Orange Lodges told about themselves, because their official histories deny that they had anything to do with politics. I urge you all to read this book at least. It doesn't denigrate anyone. It just tells a different story about how trade unions, religion, secret societies and labour politics work together. Now you'll be beginning to see why I say that fraternal societies have been and still are important, because they're connected to all these things that have been left out that I've mentioned and many more. Right from the beginning, almost everyone I spoke to or speak to today for that matter, casual conversations in pubs, at conferences or on the beach, everyone I spoke to was a Rechabite or a Druid, a trade unionist, or their parents had been Freemasons. As likely as not, they were Freemasons in the steel workers' lodges that operated inside the steelworks, or in school staff rooms, or on the buses. And everyone had regalia and photos of someone in regalia. So it's not surprising that the collection has a lot of photos and a lot of regalia, but they're not there as decoration. They are there because they are living history. Right back at the beginning, I had to work out how to tell a Freemason from an Oddfellow, or a Rechabite from a Buffalo, or any of those from a Boilermaker. The regalia and the photos were my introduction, because the truth about the fraternals has been left out too. The regalia and the photos are the proof that the truth has not yet been told. Now, this is not conspiracy theory. There's no great fraternal alliance somewhere plotting to take over the world. The reason why fraternals connect the bits that are left out is this. They, the fraternals, have been in competition with one another for members, for resources, and for political influence. And each of them, the Masons, the trade unions, the friendly societies, and many others like the Loyal Orange Lodges, has told a story to put themselves in the best light. And the history that I was taught about the Royals, about British history, about trade unions, about secret societies, and about the Freemasons are those feel-good stories. They're not the real stories. They're the stories that the fraternals wrote themselves, about themselves. So the fraternals are themselves responsible for their being left out. The truth, if we can ever get to it, is all about struggles to survive, about skullduggery and intrigue. I wrote and published this book in 2010. I'm now writing an update. I've come to understand why it's significant that the American War of Independence and the French Revolution coincided with the beginning of convict transportation to Australia. So what has been done to this point of celebration here in the university is crucially important. I'm sure that there are many in the archives in the Library of Newcastle who've been asking themselves, why me? Why have I been lumbered with this awkward problem? This mysterious collection of strange things that Dr. Bob says is valuable, but no one else seems to know anything about. I can only take credit for being the messenger and, in a small way, a facilitator. My saying that these things are important will not convince anyone, but I believe that this small collection will, if nourished, grow in size and in stature and eventually be acknowledged globally for its importance. My saying so won't convince anyone. What will convince you is the content of the Fraternal story if you take the time to listen and to look closely at the items that are on display. Thank you for listening and for being here today. Thanks, John.
You're welcome, Bob. Thank you very much. Now, I don't know, I felt like while you were talking there that we need to have another ceremony, like a ribbon cutting to officially open this, but we didn't plan anything. I did secretly message Marla to see whether something could happen, but you might have to just imagine that there's an imaginary ribbon. And Bob, can you just cut that imaginary ribbon?
Click, click. You mean there's no cake either, John?
No.
Oh.
Well, I don't know. You're in another location to me. But anyway, we virtually click or snip, and the collection is now open. Ta-da. Okay, so now it's time for a Q&A session, and we're running very nicely to time, so we've got plenty of time. So if anyone has a question, please leap forth. Amir.
Hi, John. Just I would like to say that I apologize. I forget some names, so I just sent a message to the group. Thank you, everyone. John and Imogen, Mala, Sarah, and David and Narelle, all were crucial in this project. So thanks, everyone. And yeah, that was it. Thank you.
That's all right. No worries, Amir. You're absolved. So any questions for Bob? You might have to shout because I can't see everyone. So if you've got a question, just jump in.
I'd like to ask one, if I may. Ian Boyd. Ian?
Yep. Ian Boyd? Yep.
Yes, John. We've met several times, UCA and so forth.
You're a bit hard to hear, Ian, so maybe if you speak close to whatever you're using as a mic.
How's that? Is that any better?
A little.
A little.
Yeah.
Okay.
Channel your operatic voice.
The question is, will the exhibition be going on public exhibition as well, so that Newcastle can see it? It's not only at the university, but in certain functions that happen in Newcastle. I can remember very vividly it being the first one when Bob had a museum as part of the Newcastle Museum, and it was very, very well portrayed. Thank you.
I don't know the answer to that, John. You might.
Well, there's possibilities. We're always working in collaboration with the City of Newcastle, so there's no reason why something like that couldn't happen across the institutions. Amir, do you have any comments on where a physical exhibition would probably be housed?
No, the only thing that I can say is that the good thing about digital exhibition is that it has a wider community and wider audience. So by any chance, if there comes any interest from any institution that wants to have a physical exhibition, that would be something that would be an opportunity or possibility. But yeah, we leave it for the future to decide how it shapes. Yeah, but
because we were going to have a physical exhibition with this, but COVID came in to haunt us again.
We had the not a permanent one, but a physical exhibition was the main plan, and it still will be. But yeah, we'll see how it goes next year, and how we what would be the situation with the COVID.
Yeah, and I'll just jump in there, Johnny, and say that we do have every intention of a physical exhibition of some of the wonderful highlights of the collection in the new year at the university as well.
Yeah, because it's a beautiful, if you have a look at it online, it just adds such colour and beautiful textures to the Living Histories platform as it is, because most history is in black and white generally. So it's always wonderful to have these beautiful things just shining back at you. So yes, Dr. Ross Kerridge.
Thanks, Johnny. And this.
And you're beaming in from what looks like
this.
You're at work, aren't you?
You're
not operating on anyone right now, are you?
I'm not operating on
That's
anyone,
good.
but
Okay.
we're between cases. But there's been a very convenient hiatus in the operating list. So I was able unexpectedly to listen to Bob, which was great because I've come to this very late in the day, but it's fascinating what I'm learning. But I'm wondering, particularly in the next 6 to 12 months, there must be, and presumably Bob would know, but many others would know, a whole lot of stories about the connections between fraternals and the establishment of the Newcastle Permanent and the greater Newcastle Permanent Building Societies. And I wonder whether Bob knows anything about that. I only found out recently that the Newcastle Permanent was Protestant, of course, and the greater was Catholic. And they're now merging, which is probably a good thing, but there must be a connection with fraternalism to be explored there.
Amir, you were nodding. Go for your life. No?
Who?
No, you are the expert. So I just acknowledge that there is a link. So yeah.
I'm just going to say, Ross, you're quite right. But there are so many stories that have not yet been researched, and that's one of them.
Mm. Well, it'll be a very current topic, and it may it'd be fascinating to learn more about that.
Absolutely. You may have seen the T&G building up in Newcastle East.
Yep, the Tooth and Gums building.
That was set up by the Temperance and General Insurance Company, which was owned by the Rechabites. So yes, there are plenty of stories. I'm hoping that there will be a flood of students into the place and they will start doing the research that I probably won't be able to do before I drop off the twig.
We'll try and keep you alive before you go for a little while longer, Bob.
Well, not if you haven't got any cake.
Thanks, Ross. Well, it's important to know where all these things come from. You know, that's been the big eye opener for me in terms of this world. So, any other questions, comments?
Not a question, but just a comment from me to say I think that's the beauty of having this collection digitized and available, you know, openly for anyone here in Australia, here in Newcastle, or even overseas, to come and continue to tell the untold stories that Bob refers to, and we hope to keep it alive and keep engaging researchers with it and keep helping them to publish more and more of those stories as we go year on year.
Yeah, because there's so many areas of research that are possible, the symbolism and what's in these things, the actual movements themselves, so, and what they created in the landscape. I mean, that's really what's been interesting from our point of view, is understanding how people organize themselves to look after one another and to look after things that were missing. Yep.
John, it's Warren French here, and I'd just like to first of all make a statement to say congratulations to the Newcastle University for taking Bob's collection on. I know Bob rather well, or I think I do, but the living history of fraternalism is great. And living, I mean that we're obviously looking at its start point. Where the finish point is, I do not know, because fraternalism has changed. Bob, over the years, fraternalism has impacted upon social evolution and government policies. A lot of the fraternals are now have become incorporated. They're entities, some of them are quite big mutuals. Do you see that influence continuing so that living history will in actual fact be living, albeit in an altered state?
Thank you, Warren, for that tricky question. The truth is that as I said in my notes, the story of fraternalism is one of conflict between the fraternities for influence and for resources. There are other forces at work in the economy, of course, and one of them is a very strong power of money, which has forced a number of the fraternals to close, others to become financial institutions on the stock exchange and so on. But there is a debate happening in Europe about the usefulness that the fraternals could have in the future, because many people in Europe see a decline of Western civilization very strongly, and they are trying to understand whether there is in fact a viable third alternative between communism and capitalism. And a lot of people are looking much more closely at the fraternal history, which goes all the way back to the guilds, of course, in England and other places. So that's a debate that could be opened up here in Australia. And Ross is quite right that groups like I've forgotten, Ross, what was it again? The Permanent, that's it. The Permanent Building Society and all of those things, they could be viable in the future again. But in order to know how the fraternals worked, we have to study them, and then we have to be able to apply the lessons that they might provide to plans that we might have for the future. So there's a lot to do.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, Warren and Bob. Right, okay, I've got two hands up, one from Chip and one from Tony. We'll go for Chip first.
Thanks, John. I just wanted to thank both Dr. James, but then also the whole Climax and Special Collections team. I bring students through special collections, through the area that Amir was working in with this material and the Glamex lab, and it provides students an actual peek inside what actually happens. How do we get from a physical object, its conservation, its preservation? How does that work through? How does that wind up being translated? Things from the archive, things from the Glamex lab, and how does it get translated into metadata? And then I work with them on the possibility of things that can be done with that in terms of digital analysis, but then also expression. So the kind of virtual exhibit that's being put on today is something that I will want to be using as a case study for students at Newcastle to show them, here's a way that you can actually communicate with the public. Too often academics are concerned about communicating with other academics, which means that you write a paper that only 10 people read. Whereas you put on a virtual exhibit like this, and you can communicate with the world. So it's certainly important material. Other people that were, certainly hands-on. He was on the call earlier with Zane, but then also Katie, because she had my students in her space asking very pointed questions about how they actually get things digitized. So thank you to all of you. And I've researched friendly societies in Britain, especially because I've got some research coming out probably next year, one of the journals, on the first Australian savings bank, which, like the friendly societies, was another sort of refuge from capitalism to begin with, before it became a space for accumulation. So there's a lot of stories that didn't get told. I'm not sure if any of you, Bob, do you know about the Toll Puddle Martyrs? I'm sure you've run across them. But it was great to see the story about them and be able to include it as part of the exhibit. So seeing explicit connections between a friendly society, trade unions, and then having people basically, having 6 people being sentenced to transportation to 7 years and wind up in Newcastle jail because they were members of a friendly society and they're trying to shut down trade unions. To me, it was a great connection to show the heritage between, what came out of Britain and its establishment here in Australia. So thank you to all of you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chip. And Tony, lovely to see you again. Over to you.
Thanks, John. Thanks to Bob for the plugging of the book. I'm currently investigating one of the fraternities that's most difficult to find information on, and Bob might want to say something along those lines. that's the Knights of the Southern Cross, because in Singleton, I think that they ended up dominating local politics, both Labor and Country Party people on council and on other organisations. But how do you actually research something like the Knights of the Southern Cross, which is still as tight as a fish's cake hole?
Thank you, Tony, for another tricky question. Left to myself, if someone asked me to research the Knights, I'd do all the obvious things first, like Wikipedia and search online and so on, go to the local library, etc., etc. Then I'd go through the local newspapers, 19th century probably. But I wouldn't, I mean, you know the problems that we had with the Loyal Orange Lodges in Sydney. At a certain stage, after we'd researched there for, I don't know, a number of weeks, they decided that we were getting too close to the core of the thing, and they shut the place down. There are lots of reasons why secret societies are secret, and they're not all benign, but they're not all trying to take over the world either. But with the Knights of the Southern Cross, I suspect the best place would be in Rome.
One way to go.
Well, perhaps we should talk the Vatican into putting on a digitised exhibition of their resources and seeing what we can find. I don't know.
No, it's just like Musselbrook with Donald Horne and the Freemasons dominating political life in that town. I think that
I'm sure there's a lot of material in the papers, Tony, but I'm sure you're looking at those too.
I'm starting to,
yeah. And that would be a fascinating story. I've worked basically on the broad outline. In some cases, like the Toll Puddles, I had to dig down and go into the details, but I've been trying to make sense of this huge conundrum that everybody knew about the Freemasons, but nobody talked about them. Everybody knew that the trade unions used to have secret passwords and handshakes and all the rest of it, but nobody talked about it. So on the one hand, there was a lot of, if you like, myth about the fraternals, but no actual details. And I've been trying to work on the broad outlines of that story so that other people hopefully can come in and fill in the details.
There you go. Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Tony. Any other last questions? We've sort of done for now, but if anyone's got a burning question, now is your chance. I can't see any hands or any secret looking symbols. So thank you very much, Bob. Thank you, everyone, for coming. We will now be moving into the Hunter Living Histories portion of the get together, but I'd just like to thank everyone for coming and sharing this this launch with us. Please enjoy the Fraternal Societies collection page on Living Histories at your own leisure, and thank you very much for attending.